This video is about Norwegian philosopher Peter Wessel Zapffe's disturbing account of the human condition. In 1933, Zapffe wrote a dark essay entitled The Last Messiah, where he laments the reality of mankind. Zapffe traces the predicament of humans to their excessive consciousness compared to other creatures that are simple and unsuffering. In the beginning of the essay, he uses an analogy that shows how excess leads to death. He describes how the Cervus gigantus, which is an ancient type of giant deer, went extinct when their horns started to grow bigger than normal, bigger than they used to. Zapffe likens the extinct deer's superfluous horns to humans' excessive consciousness. He says that life had overshot its target, a species had been armed too heavily, equally a menace to its own well-being. Zapffe uses beautiful imagery to describe the overdeveloped consciousness of humans. He says that consciousness is like a sword without a hilt and with a two-edged blade. So whenever you use the sword, you bleed because you grab it by its blade that is sharp from both sides. Back to the deer analogy, Zapffe wonders why humans haven't gone extinct just like the giant deer when their antlers started to overgrow. Because for the analogy to be complete, humans will have to go extinct, crushed under the weight of their corpulent consciousness. And he tries to answer that by saying that humans voluntarily disable their consciousness from time to time to be able to continue to live. That's why people get drunk, indulge drugs, or do anything that disables their consciousness. They busy themselves with anything that keeps them away from thinking. He argues that the giant deer could have done the same. They could have decided to cut their horns every time they overgrew. This would have caused them physical pain, but would have allowed them to live longer as a species. But Zapffe says that this would not have been a noble route. They would have lived longer, but more miserably. Zapffe then criticizes psychiatry because psychiatry qualifies behavior like introversion, refusal of nourishment, and depression as pathologies. He argues that those things do not denote a sickness of the soul. What they denote is the destruction and the collapse of the protective walls that shield the soul. Then he states that people manage to keep going in life only because they use repressional mechanisms, and he enumerates 4 types of mechanisms: isolation, anchoring, distraction, and sublimation. Isolation is the conventional agreement within societies, families, and professions to completely ignore anything destructive. Parents prohibit their children from asking questions about death, sex, or feces. Doctors train to view their patients as only patients. Tact has it that you don't ask people about their scars. Anchoring is setting ideals, models, and codes that guide the person's choice, thought, and action. Some of the most popular examples are religion, karma, political causes, or securing a good future. Yet it is very likely that people discover the frailty of their ideals, and they very soon try to adopt new ones, because this period that follows the renouncement of one's anchors, of one's ideals, and the embrace of new ones is very stressful. This period that follows the renouncement of one's ideals and that precedes the embrace of another, Zapffe calls a limited duration of truth. Many of the things we believe in for Zapffe are only examples of anchoring. Distraction is another repressional mechanism. It refers to how people busy themselves with things to do in order not to think about the unthinkable. There are many things that we do during the day that take some time and that do not satisfy any biological urges. What is important about doing those things like playing video games, reading, or watching fiction, what is important about all those things is that they take some time until we have to go to sleep. They fill a lot of time that, if not filled, will be used to think about hurtful things. Sublimation is the 4th mechanism. It is the least used mechanism because it is not accessible to everybody. Sublimation is when the person bites into pain and creates something artistic out of it. Caspar David Friedrich's painting Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog is a good example of sublimation. With regard to his painting, he affirmed that the artist should paint not only what he has in front of him, but also what he sees inside himself. Edvard Munch's famous painting, The Scream, is another example of sublimation. In his diary, he writes about how the idea of the painting came to him. He wrote, "I was walking along the road with two friends when the sun went down. Suddenly the sky turned as red as blood. I stopped and leaned against the fence, feeling unspeakably tired. Tongues of fire and blood stretched over the bluish-black fjord. My friends went on walking while I lagged behind, shivering with fear. Then I heard the enormous infinite scream of nature." Painting is not the only art form that allows sublimation. Edgar Allan Poe's poem A Dream Within a Dream sublimates uncertainty about life and the inevitability of death. Zapffe concludes that humans continue to think that they are destined for greatness, thanks to their intelligence and power compared to other animals, and he says that as long as humankind recklessly proceeds in the fateful delusion of being biologically fated for triumph, nothing essential will change. The increasing numbers of humans and the increasing pressures that come with the numbers are bound to demolish man's protective mechanisms. Man will suffer, and all attempts to find new messiahs that divert man's attention from his suffering will go to no avail. The last messiah, as the title of the essay suggests, the real Messiah is a man who will accept his reality, a man who knows that all life is pain, and he will preach, "The life of the world is a roaring river, but earth's is a pond and a backwater. The sign of doom is written on your brows. How long will you kick against those pinpricks? But there is one conquest and one crown, one redemption and one solution. Know yourselves. Be infertile, and let the earth be silent after you." This is the second video in a series of We Are in Hell. Until we meet again, make good use of your repressional mechanisms and have great days.